Shadow Slave. By Guiltythree. Chapter 1249, Titanic Ship. So. This is it, then. The tomb of Ariel had been built from the remains of the stone Titan, while the great river created from its blood was contained within it, illuminated by the 7 suns made from its broken soul cores. The secret hidden at the estuary was the truth that Ariel had wished to forget. The nightmare desert was the result of the battle between him and the unholy creature. Looking at the blue sky above them, Sunny couldn't help but wonder. So the demons were capable of creating artificial worlds? Then, a sudden thought made him shiver. What is the difference between a real world and an artificial one, though? Was there even a difference? And if there was not? Had the rest of the worlds been created by someone, as well? The demons? The gods? The unknown? He sighed, then shook his head. Do I really have time to ponder the cosmic origins of the world? Right now, they had more practical questions to answer. Many of the mysteries of the third nightmare had been revealed to them, but many more remained. At least they now knew where they were, and what their next step had to be. Travel downstream, find the Sibyllus, and learn how to conquer this seed. Well. That is easier said than done, though. Sunny stared at the waters of the great river and saw the sharp blades of the azure serpent's dorsal fin break its surface as the great abomination hungrily circled the corpse of the Titanic turtle. A dark expression appeared on his face. After a bit of silence, he said, "Neff. Do you think we can kill this thing?" She smiled faintly. Sunny had expected to hear some kind of a crazy answer, like always, but she unexpectedly gave him a sober one instead. It is not impossible. This beast is 2 whole ranks above us, which would usually mean that there is no hope. But then again, we did eventually kill a few fallen abominations as sleepers, back on the forgotten shore. Nephi's grew silent for a moment, and then added somberly, however, the gap between ranks grows much wider the higher those ranks are. The difference between a corrupted creature and a fallen one is much greater than the difference between a fallen creature and an awakened one. While the gap between a great abomination and a corrupted one is even greater still. Worse yet, this great beast is in its natural element in the water, while we are not. My aspect will also be weakened there, in the depths. Glaring at the serpent intensely, Sunny slowly nodded. Everything she said was reasonable. I bet I can still kill it, though. Hearing his unexpected words, Nephi's chuckled. But Sunny was serious. He was not particularly confident, but he also did not think that their chances were close to 0. Both of them were strong, and they were even stronger together. There were his shadows, and the powerful memories they possessed. Most importantly, the azure serpent was a mere beast. No matter how harrowing its power was, it lacked intelligence. While Sunny was full of all kinds of devious schemes, with Nephi's trailing not far behind. The odds were perilous, but not impossible indeed. Neff sighed. Maybe. But maybe we won't need to gamble with our lives. There might not be a need to fight it at all. He lingered for a while, then nodded. She was right. Their current goal was to travel downstream, far into the past, and find those humans who had escaped the war between the gods and the demons by entering the tomb of Ariel. The corpse of the great monster they were using as shelter, meanwhile, was being slowly dragged in that same direction by the current. The titanic carcass of the black turtle was like a ship that could very well take them all the way to their destination. Since that was the case, there was no reason to battle the azure serpent, or anything at all. Of course, things could change for the worse at any moment. The future was unclear, and there was no way to tell what would happen. No. Wait. Since we are moving downstream, wouldn't it be the past that is unclear? Ah. My head hurts. Sunny sighed and glanced at Nephi's. What do we do, then? What is our next move? She looked up. The 7 suns were already starting to drown in the radiant waters of the great river, and the dawn of the eastern horizon was slowly fading into the pitch blackness of the night. Nephi's lowered her gaze. It's late. We should probably rest and take another look at the situation in the morning, with fresh eyes. I don't know about you, but I am thoroughly exhausted. I haven't slept in a long while, and the battle between the turtle and the snake took a lot out of me. Sunny smiled crookedly. He was tired, too. He had not done anything in the last couple of days except drift through the sky, but as it turned out, doing nothing was very exhausting. Especially when one was suspended between the surface of a mystical river and the sky, having to keep an eye on both lest some terrible creature swallow them whole in one bite. Yeah. I'm tired too. Some time later, the two of them were hidden from the wind and the piercing gaze of the ancient serpent in the familiar fissure on the shell of the dead behemoth. There was a small fire burning between them, casting shadows on the black rock. The shadows were dancing. There were not a lot of things on the dark island that could be used as fuel, but Sunny had a few bricks of compressed synthetic firewood stored in the covetous coffer. Once again, his loyal alloy chest had come in handy. Sadly, it was already almost empty. Nephi's made a dish from some of Sunny's last provisions, and the two of them enjoyed a late supper as the world was slowly consumed by darkness. The soft glow of the water was not visible from inside the fissure, and it seemed as though nothing at all existed outside the small circle illuminated by the fire anymore. There were no stars in the black sky, and so Sunny couldn't help but remember a similar night from many years ago, when Nephi's and he had first met on the forgotten shore and shared a conversation in the dark. Gods. Almost 4 years had passed since then, hadn't they? A small smile appeared on his face. Hey. Do you remember how you told me about the adventures of Odysseus? Nephi's looked up from her food and hesitated for a moment. A distant expression appeared on her beautiful face. Sure. Why? Sunny shook his head and shoved a spoonful of the fragrant, thick soup into his mouth. No, nothing. That Odysseus guy. I don't think he had gone through half the crap we had to go through, though. Chapter 1250, Death of a Hero. A faint smile appeared on Neff's face. She stared into the fire for a while, then leaned her back against the weathered black rock with a shrug. Who can tell? There are a lot of stories about the trials and tribulations he had to endure. Bathed in the warmth of the fire and with his belly pleasantly full, Sunny felt his body and mind relax. Throwing a curious glance at her, he asked, "What is your favorite story about that guy, then?" Nephi's remained silent for a while with a look of contemplation on her face, which was cast in shadows, with only its vague silhouette visible in the darkness. And the dancing white sparks that shone in the depths of her eyes. Eventually, she said, "Maybe it's not a favorite. But I often think about one of them, in particular." Sunny raised an eyebrow. Which one? Neff sighed quietly before answering. Odysseus was a great hero of Hellas, but he was not the greatest one. The greatest and most powerful hero was named Heracles, who was a demigod and a slayer of monsters. Heracles possessed incredible strength and performed many incredible feats. After he died, the gods took his soul to the heavenly realm, where he became an immortal god himself. She grew quiet for a moment. However, Odysseus once descended into the underworld, where he saw the shadows of the dead. Among them was the forlorn shadow of Heracles. So, when I was a child, I always wondered how Heracles could both be a god and a lost shadow in the land of the dead. Nephi shifted slightly and moved her hand, causing the fire to suddenly burn brighter. I asked my grandmother, and she explained that one part of Heracles was divine, while another part of him was human. It was the divine part of Heracles that ascended to godhood, while the human part was cast down into the underworld, doomed to wander its dark halls forever. Her voice was a little wistful. Sunny frowned and gave her a dark look. That's a little messed up. Neff smiled. Right. I also always thought that it was very unfair, for the gods to simply discard the human part of Heracles. Hypocritical, even. She lingered for a few moments and shrugged. Of course, when I grew older, I realized that it was really just two different versions of the myth colliding with each other. The stories of Odysseus are older, and so Heracles, despite being the greatest of heroes, had a tragic death in those ancient myths. The version of his own stories that we know are newer, and the original ending was changed to a happier one at some point, with the added lesson. Be a valiant hero, and you shall be rewarded. Something like that. When she finished talking, Sunny suddenly chuckled. His eye glinted in the dark. So little Neff thought that the gods were hypocrites, huh? I see now. Turns out, your disdain for the figures of authority goes very far back. A corner of her mouth twisted up. I guess it does. No wonder she is dead set on killing the sovereigns and destroying the spell. This hopeless lunatic was like that from the very start, and Sunny hesitated for a while, then asked, "Don't you think that it is a little hypocritical too, though?" You are a great figure of authority yourself now, after all. Lady Changing Star of the immortal flame, the torchbearer of humanity and the idol of millions of people, both mundane and awakened. Seems like a contradiction. Nephi's looked at him across the fire with a neutral expression. The sparks of white light in her eyes danced as she answered, humans are contradictory creatures. They can wage genocidal wars in the name of pacifist religions, tell truths to deceive each other. They can even love and hate something. Or someone. At the same time. Looking away, she shrugged and smiled. I was a very reasonable child, and I often tried to understand people through reason, to no success whatsoever, of course. It was only after I learned that people are inherently unreasonable that I started to understand them a little. Oh. I am a person too. It's no surprise that I am a bit contradictory as well. Sunny stared at her silently. After a while, he scoffed, really? Because, let me tell you, I was a very unreasonable child. Nephi's looked at him in surprise. Seriously? He nodded energetically. Oh, yes. One might even say that I was a bit dumb. Trying to understand things through reason. Couldn't be me. I just learned things through trial and error. Sunny paused for a moment, and then added somberly, well. Mostly error. Nephi's tilted her head a little, and then suddenly smiled. To be honest, I can't really imagine you as a child. I just always imagine you as you. What were you like? He scratched the back of his head with a bit of embarrassment. Well. If I remember correctly, I was very gentle and kind. To a fault, even. Do you know how kids would sometimes pull the wings off annoying insects? I would never. In fact, I would cry for a day straight if I accidentally killed a spider or a fly. His face slowly turned grim. Oh, well. That didn't last long, though. So I was mostly a weird and wicked child, I guess. Still, it was better than being soft and naive. Then, Sunny looked at Nephi's in confusion. What? Why are you looking at me like that? She blinked a couple of times. Pulling the wings off insects. What? Is it really a thing children do? He coughed. Right. I forgot that Neph grew up incredibly sheltered, because of all the assassination attempts. Had she even met someone her age before coming to the academy? Sunny awkwardly looked away. Oh. Maybe it's just a boy thing. Or an outskirts thing. I don't know, really. Not everyone does it. But some kids do. Well, I have no idea. I didn't. Neph remained silent for a while, then said thoughtfully, maybe they are playing awakened and pretending to slay nightmare creatures. Yes, that makes sense. Still. It's a bit cruel. The conversation had taken a strange turn, and Sunny was feeling a little uncomfortable. The fire was dying down, too. He cleared his throat. Well, anyway. I think it's time we went to bed. I mean, we don't have a bed. Beds. So it's time we go. To sleeping bags. Damn it. What I'm trying to say is that you should sleep first. I'll take the first watch, and wake you up later. All right. Neph watched him fumble his words with a strange expression, and then nodded silently. What the hell was that? What was I even saying? Soon, the fire died, and Sunny was left alone. Neph was asleep, and he could hear the soft sound of her breathing not too far away. After hesitating for a bit, Sunny summoned Nightmare and ordered him to guard her sleep. At that moment, the Sin of Solace suddenly said, "Wow, Sunny. You really have a way with words, huh? A real charmer." I wouldn't say that torturing insects is a very romantic topic of conversation, but other than that. Sunny ground his teeth, refusing to look at the pale apparition. Her knew exactly what the bastard looked like, anyway. Shut up.